All right. Hello, everyone. So I know people will keep jumping in, but this is a live recording of our podcast. I love doing this so people can ask questions. If you are here live, you are welcome to post your cues in the chat. And I have the lovely Jessica with me today. She's on my team. And I'm always asking myself, what do I need to do to accommodate and realign with how I want to feel? And one of the things, whether I'm doing a workshop, a webinar, is I absolutely love engagement, but I also love talking to somebody. When you're sitting at the computer talking to yourself, it gets very is there interaction? So I love, love, love interaction. And I know some of the ladies who are on, so welcome. I can see you. And as we're talking, please post your questions, your complimentary questions in the chat below. So the topic today is how not to burn out your business, your team, or yourself. And we're going to be talking about the 4 types of energy, identifying where to focus to quickly feel more alive and energized, how to lead a team you truly trust and feel supported by, and recognizing when it's time to pivot in your business strategy versus knowing when it's time to let go. And I think this is really, really important because when I'm working with people, it doesn't matter if it's in your personal or professional life, it's a leadership skill. So there's a lot of inner stuff coming up. So Jessica, what questions do you have for me so we can start diving into this topic?
Okay, so we are going to talk about we're going to start with the 4 types of energy. Tell me about what those are. Why don't you explain what those are?
Yeah. Before we do this, I'm putting you on the spot because that just brings me
Oh,
joy.
yeah, of course it does.
Okay. So you're on my team. You do a lot of operations and event management and stuff like that. So when I talk about the topic of essentially how not to burn out, what have you noticed what is your perspective observing that from me, but also the people that we work with when it comes to how not to burn out?
I think learning not to burn out requires more work than people realize. Like I think people are think it as simple as, oh, don't put things on your calendar or hire more team, but it's really what I have learned is not that at all. Like there's so much more that goes into how you react to things and how you show up for yourself. Like I would say this year, I mean, I used to work in a corporate job and I used to work all these hours of overtime. And I would say that I am professionally busier now, like taking on bigger scope things, but I feel more energized and more aligned.
Mm-hmm.
um Honestly, a lot because of the things that you have said to me, or the things I have learned from being in the community and being around and just watching other people. Like, to be honest with you, I learn a lot from other people's experiences as well as from yours. But yeah, it's just it doesn't matter what's on your calendar. If you're going to burn out, you're going to burn out. You could have 2 things on your calendar, and if you're in that mindset where you're just I'm overwhelmed, you guess what, you're correct, you are going to be overwhelmed. So there's so much more than just strategy around your calendar.
Okay, so I love that you actually said that because we'll dive into the 4 types of energy. And the one thing that you just brought up for me is this is a skill that a lot of people inside. I talk about energetic time management and how to manage your energy, not your time. And people think, oh, that's nice. And they only start implementing it when they absolutely have to, not realizing that that is the core foundation of success and building from the bottom up. So when you want to feel good, and I'm using air quotes, most of the people that I work with got into business because they wanted to create some type of freedom in their life. Freedom is a feeling, it is not a strategy. And so when you get into the doer, do, work more, work more, work more, you're like, oh, why don't I feel free? And it's because you're actually after a feeling. So if you do not understand that what you're actually after is a feeling and you can't co-create, you're always going to feel trapped. You're going to have $1 million, $10 million, bajillion dollars in the bank, and you are going to feel trapped. So This takes interpersonal leadership skills. This takes critical thinking skills, problem solving skills. That's the leadership aspect of living, and especially when you are a business owner. So, number one is understanding that what got you here is not going to get you to where you want to go. And Jessica is being nice, and what she's trying to say is number one, I required her to become a different version of herself if she wanted to up level and grow, because my value on my team is that everyone is a leader and we're coming together to build a better company or impact or whatever that is. But what I have had to learn as the actual business owner is that my KPI, I'm using air quotes, key performance indicator, which is the only time you will ever hear me say that term because I've never worked in corporate and it gives me hives, is my actual KPI, like my job description, is my energy. The leader, like I am here to lead my team, to empower my team. So, number one, if I am burning out mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, my team will feel that. And that is what I watch and observe from people, that they're so focused on strategy, or they're like, I just got to do more. I just got to do more, and not stopping and saying, one, does this feel good? Is it aligned? And if it is not aligned, it's not going to work. You will burn out 100% guaranteed. So, also another myth, and I'll get into the 4 types, but another myth is when people say do less. You cannot tell an ambitious woman to do less. And Jessica alluded to this. You can have 2 things on your calendar for the day. You will still feel burnt out. You will still feel overwhelmed. That is not going to change your circumstance. So, culturally, people are like, oh, well, I feel like crap. I'm burnt out. So therefore, I need to do less. So then I do less. But why do I feel unfulfilled? Why do I still feel angry and resentful? Why do I feel like I have lack energy? And I'm still overwhelmed. And I'm like, because it's the inner skills that you need to learn, develop, and practice in order to feel in alignment to grow. So when I'm working with people, and I'm not talking about me as a coach, when I'm hiring people to work with me, and the number one thing they say is do less, immediately I'm like, you are not my person. Immediately, no. Immediately, no. Why? Because I'm like, that is not practical or sustainable. And there have been actual times in my life when I say, doing less is actually detrimental to my emotional well being. And doing less doesn't mean laying in bed all day or like doing absolutely nothing. And I have living proof of this when I was going through my treatment 10 years ago. Doing some work, actually, I believe in my bones, work that set my soul on fire helped me heal. So you have to have the discernment, agency, critical thinking skills that even if somebody is telling you something and you're like, well, my doctor said this, my therapist said this, so and so said this. People tell me things too, but this comes down to what feels good to you. What feels good to you? And if something feels off intuitively, it is off, and you need to trust that. So when you're like, I'm doing all the things, Heather, I'm throwing noodles at the wall, I've spent money here, 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 nothing's working. And I'm like, great. We need to look at all of it, but you also need to come back to self and say, if I deeply trusted myself, what action would I be taking right now? And deep self-trust is one of those. So the 4 types of energy: mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. So I want to define these. I think culturally, everyone is very aware of what physical energy is, like your physical body. There are many aspects of that, right? You're like, I feel depleted. Okay, I'm going to look at my nutrition. I'm going to look at my exercise and my body movement. I'm now going to jump into the holistic functional health sector, and I'm going to get my gut tested. I'm going to do hormones. I'm going to do all that. That is just physical. That's your physical energy. I think that is very easy for people to intellectually understand. We've been conditioned that physical energy is really, really important. Okay. Mental and emotional. So those can be the same thing, but mental is just I'm going to call it the mental overload. So, my to do list, all the things that I'm worrying about, all the things that I'm thinking about. And Jessica, I'm going to be picking on you after I say all this, what your little commentary of what I'm saying. So, it's like that invisible mental load of everything that you are carrying. Emotional is This is where emotional intelligence, emotional energy comes from, of like anger, resentment, guilt, uh, fear, resistance. Those are the things people don't want to feel. But once you learn to master those and feel those and understand why is it here, what's it telling me, you can lean into feeling more joy, more ease, more abundance, and actually feel like you are worthy of those things. Because a lot of people are like, I want more freedom, I want more ease. And I was like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And they're like, what do you mean I don't? I'm like, you're going to have it and you're going to want to give it away. You say you want the money, you say you want the energy, you're going to get it. I'll get you there. And you're going to be so fucking emotionally uncomfortable because your identity is not used to experiencing joy. Your identity is not used to feeling like you're being respected. Your identity is not used to being supported. So, we say we want these things, but do we really? We have to be mindful of that. And that brings me to spiritual energy. How do you know you want something? I talk about desire a lot. And so everyone is welcome to bring their own belief system here. I believe if the desire is inside of you, it is meant for you. So if I was like, Jessica, write down your wouldn't it be nice list, it's going to be very different than my wouldn't it be nice list. Especially if I put like, wouldn't it be nice if I ran a marathon? Jessica's like, fuck no, that is not on my list. Um, but the point of that is, if you have a desire to be free, right? If you have a desire to feel alive and energized, that's spiritual energy. That is what your literal soul is saying. I desire this. I need this to feel alive. Like, please listen to me. And then your identity is used to feeling like shit. You are going to have resistance to feeling alive. But once you get there, and you're aligning your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual energy, that's where you're like, I'm living my best life. The journey to get there, that's where the magic happens. So, Jessica, what did you hear me say? I'm curious your thoughts, or maybe what you see people resisting, anything on that.
I think sometimes people don't understand or underestimate the connection between like your mental, emotional, and your physical. I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people don't understand that if you're not taking care of one or the other, like they're very intermingled. I would say that was a big lesson for me this year is how much prioritizing the care of my physical body has put me in a much better state for everything else. Like something as simple, I've added yin yoga to my calendar like 2 or 3 times a week. And people are like, oh, I love yoga. I was like, I'm not doing traditional yoga. It don't make me do a
Yeah.
flow like I'm not interested. I literally, it's hot yin yoga. I just lie in a room and sweat and stretch. And all it is a way for my body to like learn it's like time to wind down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally just creating the space. And I was saying this to somebody yesterday, I can't remember who it was, how much capacity that's created, which sounds counterintuitive because it's like I've added 3 hours a week to my schedule, but I
Yeah.
come out of those sessions and like my brain is on fire in the best way because I've given myself space. I come out and I'm like on my phone like a mad person in my car, like making notes about just the clarity I get. And yeah, it sounds counterintuitive because you're like, that's more on your plate. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's strategic things on my plate, not just crap.
Yeah. And you had to get to, like, someone didn't say do this. Maybe someone recommended it, but you did the thing. And then you were like, oh, this gives me more of what I want, rather than someone being like, well, I'm doing the yoga, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And it's like, but how do you feel when you're doing those things, and really listening to your body? So you're learning how to create the physical, like you're physically doing something and it's giving you more mental and emotional capacity.
Yes. And it's different for everybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I was absolutely not perfect at it. I was going like once a week. And then I was like, on Sundays, I was like, oh, well, this came up or this came up. And I just realized like that is not serving me. Do I want to do the things? Sometimes I want to do something else on Sunday, but I have to really like look at my week and like look at how I'm feeling and be like, what is a bigger priority? Going to a restaurant, having a flight of mac and cheese, or PS that I picked that over yoga,
Mhm.
or going to yoga. And in all honesty, if I could go back, I would have picked the yoga
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not a perfect practice, but it's like I almost feel like the more contrast I get, the clearer it becomes what is important to me.
Yeah. And this is where people have resistance, because when you're learning those new, I just had this conversation actually with my son last night, because he's like, I'm making different decisions and I'm losing people because of it. And I'm like, are you losing people, or are you just realigning who you actually are? And you're feeling the physical reality of the people that were around you. And it's not like you're actually losing people, you're just reestablishing relationships. So let's dive in. So, four types: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, four types of energy. Traditionally, I think we only like heavily talk about physical, and now we're starting to use cliche terms like mental health, mental wellness. So people are like, it we have so much to learn. And I say we, I think human, like in general, mainstream. But when I'm talking to people about mastering their emotions and like what do you want and desire, those are types of energy that people don't actually value or respect, but they're the things that are going to move the needle the most. And when they start working on the inside, they get it, because they're like, oh my gosh, like my calendar has opened up, or like now I feel safe to do the things, or when I'm holding a boundary, I'm not like crippled in guilt, or if I am, I know how to manage that. So it's the types of energy that you're probably not used to managing that need to be managed. If you say things like, well, I'm doing the things, I hear people do that all the time. And I'm like, great. You actually learned to master certain types of energy. You just need to advance and go to the next level, because this is a leadership skill. And burnout. Oh my goodness. I love the quote that's like, are you burnt out, or are you just unfulfilled? Like, there's so much crap on your plate that is sucking the life out of you. And if you are not aligned with how you want to feel, you will actually cut off your feelings and therefore have no idea, one, what's going to fulfill you, and two, buying into this identity. And we talk a lot about belief systems and stories in the community, but like I used to identify as a depressed person. I used to identify as an unfulfilled person. And of course, I go to someone, I keep talking about how depressed I am and how unfulfilled I am, and they just keep filling that cup. Someone else is going to fill that cup for me. When I stopped saying that and I started saying, what do I need to feel full? Like, what is my soul craving? The other type of energy. I could still be certain things, but I started just testing what is going to allow me to feel alive and energized. And then I had to have the courage to do the thing. And slowly, 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 my identity shifted. And that is how we align who we want to be. And that, unfortunately, is a part of being a business owner, because you are a leader. But you probably didn't want to be, because you just wanted to make an impact with skill. So, how to lead a team you trust and feel supported by. Um, I don't know what episode it was, but Jessica, we talked about team and a little bit more into that. Like it already went out a few weeks ago. But I just want to briefly talk about this when it comes to trust, because that whole statement, how do you lead a team you trust and feel supported by? Trust and support, those are not strategic. Those are relationship skills. Those are people skills, and those are feelings. Trust and support. You did not get into business, most likely, if you went through startup and you are a little go getter, rebel, whatever you are. I'm telling you right now, your shadow side is going to be hyper independence. You're going to have trust issues because you have a really hard time receiving, receiving support from other people. When you, Jessica, stop it with the eyebrows. When you are Miss Independent, I know I'm talking about myself, but when you are like the visionary, the challenge and the skill is learning to receive by other humans, especially when you have hired them. I'm not talking about you, I mean other people. It's like you've hired them to support you. You actually now need to let them be emotionally uncomfortable.
Yes. I'm just laughing because, you know, it actually does make sense though. Because when you think about most people, when they start a business, they don't start with a team, right? A lot of people do start on their own. I mean, it depends on what it is, but at the end of
And
the day,
most people start businesses because of a skill. They don't actually know they need to learn other skills.
that's right.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the end of the day, it also always does come back to you. So it is a balance, right? Because it is your business and you can't offload everything to other people and just solely trust that those people are going to do the things because those people aren't you and probably have a different perspective of your business. You know, like I have like a very specific lane. It's a wide lane, but I have a specific lane in your business. And there are things about your business I don't know about. And like, would it be nice to know? Of course it would, but I'm also only one human. So it's like I understand how when you are the person that is like the overarching, it is hard to not be in the things all the time. But I think that's where you shine because it comes back to how do you want to feel? Well, you quite frankly don't give a crap about ordering lunch for an event. You know how you want to feel. You want it to be healthy. You want it to be nutritious. But other than that, you're like, I don't want to do this. That's how we got here.
Yeah. Nor
Like I
should
want
I.
to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah. And I think that that is an ongoing thing. I don't think it's like a one and done thing. I mean, we've talked about this on a few of our episodes about how our relationship has evolved and like how we've had to really put work into it, uncomfortable conversations, tears, sometimes ones that bring you joy, sometimes otherwise. And
Yeah.
it's like a marriage.
So that's what I was just writing down is uncomfortable conversations. Because how many times have we, like, even just coaching people on how to have uncomfortable conversations in relationships? So, number one, you as business owner and your team, it's a relationship. It doesn't matter if it's you and child, you and team, you and marriage partnership, you and a friend, you in relationship with any other human being is a relationship. Therefore, people skills, relationship skills come into play. And for whatever reason, our brain is like, oh, I wear this hat, that person wears that hat. We're supposed to perform a certain way, but the connection is a relationship skill. So if you're like, well, I suck at relationships, good. Another fucking growth opportunity. You have to learn people skills. So here's the challenge. When you say, I want to lead a team I trust and feel supported by, trust is the opposite of fear. Support is the opposite of unsupported. So, unsupported and fear come with a lack energy. Like I'm assuming nobody has ever said to me, I love being in fear based relationships. I love feeling unsupported. No one has ever said that to me. When I say, how do you want to feel in your relationships? They typically say supported, connected, trusted, alive, energized. Like there's something we desire, right? So if you don't know how to manage fear, you have to co-create your life with fear. It's going to show up in your relationship. It's going to show up in your business. The closer you get to the life you want to be living, it's going to get bigger and bigger. And you got to be like, hey, you, come on, we're going to co-create today, but I'm not going to live in this energy. You have to rise above it. You have to know how to like transmute it. So, a specific example of this is if you want to trust somebody, trust is the foundation of any relationship. So if you are in a relationship with somebody on your team and you do not trust them, that needs to, like, you either one need to say, okay, we're no longer aligned and we just have to release that, or I can't even tell you what to do because literally the foundation needs to be trust. Like, you have to work on trust building first. So I'll give you a perfect example. And Jessica, I don't think like you and I are good examples because we have like uncomfortable conversations. We talk about this, like ask what's your life vision? Like, we're very interconnected in that. Like, I care about you as a human and trust has been built. But I want to say something like a bookkeeper or an accountant as an example. Like somebody, it could be my personal trainer. It could be anyone that I hire in my life to be on my quote unquote team. It could be my personal team, professional team. It could be a babysitter for my kids. If I don't trust them, it's not going to work. So the trust might be me, okay? Here's the thing you need to identify. If you're like, I'm a person who has trust issue, that's a you issue and you need to learn. And sometimes it's like you got to go back to your childhood and figure out why you have trust issues. And sometimes you just need to lean into vulnerability and try it out. I mean, I've done this with you, Jessica. I've done this with other people where I'm like, why do I react? And the second I go into a fear state, I'm like, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. Okay, I'm observing my own patterns. I'm living in the energy or I'm leading from the energy of fear. Now, if I, and everyone can literally stop this recording if you are listening to this or if you're here live, obviously pay attention. If I deeply, like, write this down as a little journal prompt, if I deeply trusted myself in this relationship with this team member or this person, how would I show up? I can still review their work, but I can co-create and I can coach that person instead of literally paying somebody to help me and not take anything off of my plate. Now, if I say to that person and I'm coaching them because I'm learning to trust and I'm triggering the crap out of them, because this is what I know a lot of people are going to say is I don't trust my team. You have to identify, is this a me issue or is this a them issue? And if you are going to continue to be in a relationship with them, you have to challenge them. And it's going to make you emotionally uncomfortable because I understand not everyone can just like, fire everybody and say, I'm going to have a new team. If you don't trust people, you have to build that trust. But you have to put them in situations where they can either the contrast can get bigger and bigger and bigger until they decide to go, or their contrast is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and they're deciding to grow. I'm curious if you have any thoughts, Jessica.
That was actually one of the questions I was going to have is how do you handle, like, how do you emotionally prepare to give feedback? Because I think in some of the conversations we have, like, they're very much two-way conversations, right? Like, I think sometimes people think I'm the boss. So it's like, it's a one-way kind of like feedback conversation. And I think in my experience with people who I have reported to or worked for in the past, what I think is so different about you and our relationship is you're constantly saying, like, challenge me. Like, I want you to lead. And you will ask me, like, what are your thoughts on this? And you like are very open to the feedback. Sometimes you don't like it. I can usually tell, but you still own up to it. And you're like, I think that you're very good at walking away and thinking about it and coming back. It's not always like a one and done conversation. It's very rarely is. So I guess my question would be is how do you handle that when I say something that triggers the shit out of you, or when I do something that triggers you, or like, how do you continue to keep yourself open to that in the face of your life experiences and stuff and not shut down, which would essentially stop that like trust cycle?
Yeah. So, number one, I understand that I am not perfect and I need feedback too. And that is the point of hiring a team so that you are not taking everything else on yourself. So that's an identity shift. I also think people have really big egos. And you kind of need to have a little bit of an ego death in order to be open to receiving. So I see two types of people. There's the one that's the overperformer, underperformer. You have the overperformers who are like, I am almighty, I am great, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you have a big ego. You need to like be open to receiving a little bit of the feedback, because even if you are not the issue, you have to, if you're hearing the same thing from your whole team, that's a you issue, or you just need to find magical unicorns. But then there's the underperformer who's like getting all this feedback from people and they're taking everything that they say to heart, in the sense of like, oh, I need to change this because they want me to do this and this. And I'm like, you're not trusting yourself. So it's the fine balance between, number one, as the business owner, you need to understand, if you are the visionary in your business, and there's different types of business owners, but if you are like in it and you're the vision and you want to be involved in the vision part of your business, that is your number one like goal. Like, you have to understand your vision. If someone on your team does not align with your vision and they're not willing to grow into it or have those uncomfortable conversations, they are not aligned with your values, and that is not going to work. That's going to be a huge energy leak. That said, a little tiny minute, like, I'm very aware of my quote unquote strengths and weaknesses. And I'm always becoming aware of more strengths and more weaknesses, more shadow sides or whatever it is. And I will watch myself. Like, when you give me feedback, I'm like, okay, let's try it. And my gut maybe being like, I don't agree, but let's see what happens. Like, I just need to test it. So I think there's the vulnerability of, you need to be open to receiving and testing. And the last thing I want to say about this whole like team thing, and then I want to move on, like pivoting business strategy versus knowing when it's time to let go, is I see this with women and their partners in their home. I see this with women and their children. We are nurturers by design. When you are over nurturing your people or being hyper independent, this is where you see people being like, the invisible mental load, the blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you did this to yourself. You are taking away from other people's growth opportunities. I talk about this a lot when it comes to parenting, because I'm like, you're over nurturing. I'm now watching and observing all of these people, brain scientists, they're like, let people fail. People need to fail to experience their own contrast. How did you get to where you are today? Most likely, you had an experience or multiple experiences in your life where you had such big contrast and it forced you to grow. If you're taking away that contrast or those feelings from other people, and you're kind of like, what do they call it? Like helicopter, like you're helicoptering it, trying to get in front of other people's emotional discomfort. You're taking away their feelings. They actually cannot feel the full depth of their human experience. So therefore, they won't actually have the lesson. And so feeling supported by other people is not watching them fail, but like holding the like bumpers, right? When they're learning new skills and coaching them and being like, I know this is uncomfortable, but you got it. Like, we do something on the team. We talk about first shitty pancakes, and I give people permission. Create shit. Just send me shit. I'll give you feedback on it. And then we keep co-creating. Let's just keep the energy moving. So, how to lead a team you trust and feeling supported, you have to allow other people to get emotionally uncomfortable. You have to be open to receiving, know very clearly your vision. And this kind of leads into when to let go, but sometimes you got to let go of people way sooner than your ego and your feelings want to, and it's costing you so much time, so much money. I tell people, well, what's your vision? They're like, I want to go to multi seven figures, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And I'm like, okay, when we're going to the nitty gritty, the team that you have now is not going to get you there, and you can't do it by yourself. recognizing when to pivot your business strategy and knowing when it's time to let go. Did you have any cues around this, Jessica?
I have a few cues around this, but this one, I like this topic because I remember coming from corporate. I remember the first time I worked with you. I literally remember sitting in your kitchen because we were doing that event that we did in 2020. And you were like, we were changing things. Like you changed the website a bunch of times. You kept changing things. And I feel like you were giving me like heart palpitations. And you
Mm-hmm.
were like, I literally remember where we were. It was like a rainy day. It was October. And you were like, if you do not let go of that rigidity and like learn to pivot, you are not going to last on my team.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being so annoyed
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, I come from like a very structured, like, sorry, let me rephrase that. Earlier iterations of me were more comfortable being in a more controlled, more structured experience because I didn't trust myself. Now you change things on me all the time, and I'm like, all right. And you're like, oh, who have you become? And I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I heard you. It only took me 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's very fascinating because it's like when you talk about that like deep self-trust, it is wild how much easier pivoting and letting go becomes when you feel more in alignment with like your vision and stuff and with yourself. And when you know that it's like, okay, this has to pivot. Like nobody's gonna die.
Mm-hmm. What's
Brain
the
surgery.
question?
Well, one of them is let me see here. Okay, how do you get your team on board? Piggybacking off of team that you trust and feel supported by. How do you get your team on board to work with you in a pivot? And how do you feel if they have pushback?
Okay. So this again comes to, and I'm talking specifically to the business owner. You deep self trust and becoming and embodying that energy is a skill and it's a life practice. Your energy is a skill and a life practice. So if you were like you've been in business, you're seasoned, you've made it through, some rough patches, you have the skill of perseverance and grit. You probably have problem solving skills. You have, like some type of, what am I trying to say? Critical thinking skill. And I've watched this like through COVID, like when I was helping people in their businesses through COVID and they're like, hey, I have all in person. Now I need to do this. Like people pivot and they pivot quick. I see the skills that the people who survive are the ones that are like, I need to come up with a problem. Like I need to problem solve this and I need to present it to a team. I think where people lack and realize is the second, number one, you're like, okay, give me my bubble. I'm going to problem solve this. You have to sell a concept to your team on a daily basis. So I expect resistance. Sometimes I don't want to deal with it because I don't have the capacity to deal with the resistance. And sometimes it's not mine to deal with, but I have to reestablish, like resell ideas and concepts on a daily basis. But understand, is the reselling of an idea just my visionary brain that has all these ideas? I like pushback from my team. I expect it at this stage in the game where I'm like, give me feedback, give me pushback. And what I mean by that is what comes up for you? Because if they give that to me, then I get to decide, is that a good, like, is that good feedback, or is that just their stuff being projected onto me? So again, knowing like how to manage your own, like knowing your vision, knowing where you want to go, not just charging ahead and being like, my team needs to follow me all the time. Your team is not just there to get stuff done. They're great. They're like, listen, last week you told me you wanted to do this and you never wanted to do XYZ again. This week you're like, let's do that XYZ. And it's like, so what happened here and why are we doing that? Like questioning people so you guys can co-create together. And to be radically honest, if you are the visionary, and I've seen this in multiple businesses, you have the visionary, which sometimes is like herding a cat because they're very creative. They have all these ideas. You need to hire your blind spots. You need to hire the things you don't want to do. Most of those people are going to be ordered people, like people. They're going to like control. They're going to like consistency. So sometimes I'm like, great, I'm in a season where I need to lean into this and I need to like do the thing I'm resisting. versus knowing when to pivot. Like, look at data too. I'm not a lover of data, but I have data people on my team and they're like, Heather, you want to blow this up, but look, the data is trending in the right location. So you can pivot if you want to, but the data shows we're headed in the right direction. Versus I'm like the data, and then sometimes I'm like the data showing that we're headed in the right direction, but something feels off and my intuition is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is no longer aligned with my vision. I don't care if the data is trending in the right position. I'm going to be out soon if the energy and the passion is not there. So again, it's a yes and conversation and multiple conversations that you need to have.
Yeah, I think I can think back to like, because I've been with you now in some capacity since like 2019, I think it was. And I can think of countless conversations, and sometimes you show up and you're like, I really don't know. So like I'm super open to feedback. And sometimes you're like, I am so certain about this. And you'll say, where I need your feedback is this specific part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or here's where I want to go. How do we get there? And I think that's what always impresses me about working with you is that you are, and I know you work at it. Like, I don't know that people see that behind the scenes, is that you really work at that clarity for yourself. So I guess the question would be, as how do you stay in that clarity, like, and what is your advice for that? Because I think sometimes you're right, when you have so many thoughts in your brain as a visionary, how do you get really focused on the right
Mm-hmm.
direction?
So I think the advantage that I have is seen behind the scenes of a lot of businesses, that and at multiple iterations, and the ones that I see are most successful is when the founders and the leaders in the business are willing to do the inner work. Um, because I have seen businesses, 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, doesn't matter, 6 figures, startups that are struggling with what they call team culture. They use the term team culture. And what I actually see is that's a relationship skill. It's not a culture skill. So you are the culture creator. You are the culture creator in your home. Like you literally, we all know what it's like to walk into a house with somebody that where you're walking on eggshells. That's a culture. Like you, it's an energy. So you are that in your business and in your team. And so taking a little bit of energetic responsibility for that is vulnerable. And so that for a lot of people, they're like, I just want to avoid that because I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel that my energy actually influences a room. But you are powerful. We are all powerful. So I'm constantly working on that. I'm constantly trying to be incredibly mindful of where am I bottlenecking myself, being open to feedback when it comes to that as well. But seeing behind the scenes when someone's like, I'm going through so many team members, I'm like, okay, is that a you issue? Is it a hiring issue? Like, what is this actual challenge that we're experiencing here? Because it's again, it's coming back to relationships. How are people motivated? And uh, most of the time, when I have seen the most successful companies and businesses thrive, it's because they're investing in their people too. So I invest in myself in all 4 types of energy: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. I know on a deep level, when I started my work, I didn't want to quote unquote be a bad mother. I didn't want to feel like I was failing at mothering. Then I wanted to grow my business. Understand that everything I do is to nurture other people and to be like to impact other people. So I know that my energy and how I feel makes a big impact. If you have somebody in your life and you're like, "Oh my gosh, there's always conflict. Oh my gosh, like I don't feel supported by them." You know what that feels like to receive it. So remember, as the culture creator, you are that for other people. And you're the challenger. If you want to grow into your next level vision in your business, you want to make more money, you want to scale, you want things to be more profitable, you want to have more time with your family, you want to feel more alive and energized. Um, that should make you emotionally uncomfortable to step up and put those boundaries in place. So knowing when to pivot your business and knowing when to let go, it's all about intuition, but you have to understand strategically, like on a logical level, where are you going? Get super crystal clear on that and ask yourself, are these the people that are going to get me there? And I guarantee you, and I've seen this again and again, some of the, you may say, no, that person's not going to get me there, but you've also never given them the opportunity to grow because you've never asked them. So I want to be mindful of time, but I'm just curious if there's any other last minute questions, Jessica, that you think I should compliment what I've said.
Mm, I don't think so. I'm curious if anybody that is listening has questions. We haven't had any in the
Hmm.
chat, but if anyone's got them, I would love to answer them. But I don't know, I was just thinking about like as you're saying things, I was thinking about like what it means to be on your team and some of those things. And like if somebody's listening to this and they're not the visionary, they're the team. And it's like, how do you show up in that leadership energy still when you're not maybe like the top leader?
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of conversations around that, especially this year. That's where Tiny Backpack came from, and which we talked about on our other
On the other
episode.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, but essentially what it is everybody just like owning their stuff and helping to make the load more evenly distributed, I guess you could say, across the team. And yeah, I just think about like just because you're not like the top of the like you're not the visionary, the CEO, doesn't mean that your opinions and your thoughts and stuff are not just as valuable and that you are not still a leader, right? Like it's funny because I mean, if you looked at your company on paper, I would say like you're at the top and then like me and Lisa and like so on. But I would say that in actuality, like in practice, I would feel like we are like this.
Hmm.
Like I don't ever feel like you pull like the boss card or the leader card. I would say there are times when you step into that and you have to put your foot down on things
Yeah.
for sure. But I don't feel that way. And I think that because you operate that way, it really empowers me as your team member
Hmm.
to step into a leader energy. And a leader energy does to me as your team doesn't mean I'm making final decisions on things. It means I'm owning this and then we're having the conversation and then we're executing from there. So sometimes I'll come to you with something you're like, absolutely not, immediately no. Like like
Yeah.
me with a
I want to
marathon.
be able to,
Immediately no.
yes, 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 yes. I don't want to cut you off, but I know we can have this conversation. Like we could literally talk about this forever and ever. And again, it comes back to relationship that everyone has a voice. Every human matters. And when we're like, I am almighty and I am, because it's my business, it's my mine, it's like being mindful that if you want team to help you grow, sometimes it is investing in that person, time and energy and resources and skills. And sometimes it's saying, I see that you are at your capacity, like your mental, like what do you call it? Not mental capacity, but you're like
Ceiling,
at your, pardon?
ceiling, like your mental
Yeah,
ceiling.
like your mental ceiling. Like this is only as far as you are willing to grow. Therefore, we got to put you in a different position or release you. And of course that is emotionally uncomfortable. So, topic, how not to burn out your business, your team or yourself. Well, number 1, you need to realign how you want to feel. And number 2, you also need to be able to create the culture of that for your team, that how they want to feel matters too. And I have seen this again and again and again, that when everybody's cup, this is so metaphorical and annoying, when everyone's cup is full, everyone gets to pour from a full cup instead of burning out your team that have empty cups and then being like, why aren't they performing? Why aren't they doing this? And it's like, because everyone's battery is on empty and you need to learn. It's counterintuitive culturally because we've been taught to hustle and go, go, go and push, push, push and burn out. But when we recharge our mind, our bodies, our souls, we get to feel more alive, and more alive people perform better. It's just common sense, but it's not that common. So the last thing I want to say, obviously you're either listening to this live or you're going to listen to the replay when it's on the podcast. If you're a business owner and you're like, hey, Heather, this is great. I'm completely energized by this conversation, but I have no idea where to start. You can also consider starting a what I would call an audit. It could be a capacity audit, helping you create more capacity in your life, time, and energy. Or it could be a profit audit where you're like, yes, I want time and energy, but I'm sinking ship. We got to figure out the money piece first. So head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/focus. Fill out that application and my team will be in touch for you or with you. And we'll do, if you're aligned and it's a good fit, then we'll consider doing a audit with you. And those audits are really about helping. I don't want to say diagnose because I can't diagnose anything, but it's like diagnosing the problem. When we are in our business, like I get people outside of the business all the time to say, show me what I can't see, right? Like you're smiling, you're not looking in a mirror, you got spinach in your teeth. Like somebody outside of you is going to say, okay, this is what you said you want. This is where you said you're going. This is a huge energy leak. We need to patch this leak right here. So sometimes we're blaming ourselves too much. It's not us. We're not the actual problem. Sometimes it's somebody on the team. Sometimes you need to hire somebody else on the team. Sometimes it's our money shit. We're either hoarding too much money, we're not spending enough, we have way too many expenses. And so you can go through all of this with I'm going to say it wrong, fine tooth comb so that you have a bigger vision of where to go. So we diagnose the problem and then we realign it based on, is it a time issue, a money issue, an energy issue, a team issue, all of those things. Because when you are alive and aligned, why work so damn hard to make an impact in the world when you say you want freedom, but you do not feel free? Boom. All right, ladies, thank you so much. And Jessica, thank you for always being my little sidekick.
It's me.
Yes. All right. Bye, ladies.